Okay, guys, we're back for another live. Trying a different time, so it's Monday morning, like 9:47 in Perth. So it might hit like US, a little bit late for Europe, I suppose. So, see if we can get some people on, some questions. Okay, not warmed up in any way at all, so let's warm up. I feel about as energetic as Rosie at the moment. So drinking some coffee, do a few light stuff, open the hips, hamstrings up, make the wrists nice and happy. Let's see how my balance is today. There's quite a bit of building work going on across the road from us, so if it's noisy, I apologise. Just let me know if that becomes an issue. So ask away, jump in early, get some questions in. These straddle good mornings, if you're not doing these are awesome. I do them every day, opening and closing the hip, just trying to keep the back flat. And we go up and down, and then notice how much I'm pushing my hips backwards to counterbalance the head and shoulders going forwards. Really good to then do a transition forwards into something. So it could be like a planche type movement or a press. We're just transferring weight then forwards and then up. If you have it, either press, crow, open and closing everything, especially around those hips. I notice if I don't do that for a few hours, everything starts to lock up. So straddle good mornings, staple. Yeah, Rosie's there. She's been out for her walk this morning. Guys, any training questions? Basis, you mean basic? So beginner, new. So basically when you're starting out, I would make sure you're practicing on a daily basis, but just playing around with lots of different things. So mobility, strength, both in straight arm positions, bent arm positions, and then obviously handstands. Basic balance, just making sure that you're nice and comfortable in a crow position. You can take head down towards the floor, back up again, toes to the floor. If that feels impossible, just play around with keeping the toes on the floor and then just open and closing that position and get used to that seesaw. Understanding that seesaw, whether it's real basic with keeping the feet on the floor, loading the hands very slowly, or more advanced stuff like crow handstand, press to handstand, anything like that, carries across to so many movements. Even if we look like a muscle up, we come up from behind, transferring the weight forwards, and then pushing down on the rings. Again, transferring the weight, learning how to do that is really cool. So let me know any other questions you've got. Let's test cold one-arm handstand. I want to do it on my good side. I'll show you the difference. This is my bad side. That's it. So no warm-up. Right can get away with it, left needs a week of warm-up. What calisthenics exercise skills should a beginner start with to build a good foundation for more advanced moves? Obviously, there's a massive truck just coming past. Obviously, you got your basic calisthenic movements like chin-ups, dips, so upper body pushing and pulling with a bent arm. Skin the cat for straight arm is an amazing exercise. Once you've got that standard basic hanging down, So once you're comfortable in a hanging position, so passive hangs, active hangs, moving between those. Once you're nice and comfortable through there, adding in the variation of skin to cat. Now you might not be able to pull yourself up, and I recommend you do it with rings. I haven't got my rings set up at the moment, but be able to pull yourself up, over into German hang, and then back again. All you do is you do it on a bar that's close to the floor to start with, on rings. So skin the cat, chins, dips, and then basic balance. So I don't know whether you was on a second ago when I was just showing those, understanding these type of positions. So transferring weight forwards and down so the feet come up, come back again. So really getting used to that from a balance point of view and controlling your body. So using it like a seesaw. So hips come up, shoulders come down. That's really, really useful as well. And then your basic handstands, if you want to go into handstand work, start that as soon as possible. I've got lots of beginner follow-alongs and that on my channel. But mobility and handstands are the two movements that really take a long time, but you can train them so frequently, especially when you're a beginner, and then just go into those strength movements. For hand warm-ups before practicing handstands, I'm doing basic training. Yeah, look, in terms of, if you're talking about like warming the hands and the wrists up, I would go really, really basic. So literally just transferring weight to the hands. So all I do is for my handstand warm up is literally a few circles forwards and backwards and just start to put weight into the hands and just peel the hands up and down. I don't do anything fancy, and then just start to slowly load. So it might be into that crow position, it might be into a chest tall position or a freestanding handstand, and then go into the handstand practice. What's the best exercise for strong wrists, and how do I balance on a straight bar? So if you want to go onto a straight bar, as in this way around, so these are very different. So if we're training in this position with our hands on a straight bar, so like that, or if we're in that position, they're quite different in terms of how we're balancing. The technique is still the same, where we're strengthening the overbalance and the underbalance, but the way we're doing it, so I'm using my hands forwards and backwards like that, or if I'm using a straight bar this way around, I'm now pulling myself more. So on a bar, you can pull yourself side to side. On a flat floor, you're pushing your fingers and putting weight into the heels of the palm, taking the shoulders forwards. So whichever variation you're going to do, warm the wrists up in terms of slowly increasing the load in the hands on the whatever you're doing, whether it's floor or bars, just slowly increase the weight onto them until your hands and that feel okay. Then I would go into your basic heel pull, toe pull drills. So overbalance, underbalance drills against the wall on whatever you're using. So if you're using a straight bar, if you're using a parallel bars side by side, or if you're using the floor, just practice that balance window. So if you're strong freestanding, you can jump straight up. So I can go into this position, and then I'm going between underbalance and overbalance, just playing around with that, making sure I've got that window of balance. If I'm not so conditioned to it, I'll do it up against the wall, pulling on and off the wall. But if I'm going to do a P-bar workout or a straight bar workout, I'll do exactly the same thing, but obviously using those bars. There's a dog across the road going crazy. So, like that. So just warm up, easier variations of whatever you're going to do. I recommend that across the board. So if you're working handstand push-ups, do a really easy version of your handstand push-ups to warm up with. If you're working press handstands, whatever easier variation you can do for the hips and the shoulders, and then slowly increase it as you get more warmed into it. Any other questions, guys? When the questions don't come, I'm going to drink coffee. So basic drills against the wall, just doing work in front and behind the wall. So if I'm So chest to wall, back to wall, right? So if I kick up to the wall, I'm pulling away from the wall using my fingertips and I'm reaching up towards the sky, and then I relax back to the wall again. So I'm not coming past my handstand. I'm going to my handstand, going back again. And then the harder variation, but the one that's going to give you a very solid handstand entry and open up the press handstand push up freestanding versions is this one, open and closing that shoulder position to pull off the wall. So notice I'm taking the shoulders forwards, pushing up to the sky, coming back again. So working both of those. If you're on the P-bars, do exactly the same, but just holding the P-bars. So don't kick off the wall, don't push off the wall with your toes. Don't step off the wall. Thank you. What's the best exercise for strong forearms for handstand? Look, forearms are just going to get strong with what you're doing. So as you increase the progressions of your exercises, your forearms will get stronger and stronger, and just try to have some sort of balance. So be doing bent arm pushing and pulling, do straight arm pushing and pulling, and then the handstand work. I wouldn't isolate. It's not like bodybuilding where you want to isolate specific muscles. I would work the skills and the progressions towards the movements. And if you find you have a strength gap or a balance gap, you need to fill it. But I wouldn't be worrying about trying to strengthen specific muscle groups. The exercises should do them because they should highlight the ranges of motion or the parts of the movement where you're missing something. Then you need to work out the progression that you can do that's going to fill that gap. So your forearms will just get stronger depending on what progression you're working towards. Is it better to learn pancake or focus on strength for the press to handstand? So I would work on both. So basically with that, you're going to have something that you're better at. So I'm more stronger than I am more flexible. So naturally, I'm very, very tight. You can do a flexibility test. So a 9-point flexibility test. So if you know it's just a quick one, there's 9 points you can go through. But if we just look at fingers straight away, so notice when I pull my finger down, it doesn't open up through this joint. So if you're very flexible and naturally hypermobile, you'll have 90 degrees at this finger. So that little finger will pull there to 90 degrees. See, mine doesn't do it. So what that means is that I'm not naturally flexible. So I have to work more for my flexibility. That doesn't mean I shouldn't train it, but it just means it's going to come slower than the strength. So if you look at my first press handstand that I got, it looked like this. It was actually a bit of a pike press type movement. I was raised up on a mat. I was on a bit of an angle to make it easier as well. And I basically just took my shoulders really far forwards and then pulled myself up. So I used strength to get up out of that position, not so much flexibility. However, I would be working both of them because your warm up for your handstand exercises and what you do in your rest periods for your handstand training, whether it's handstand strength training or handstand balance training, should be flexibility work. And I would just increase your flexibility because what's going to happen is the difference between having a flexible press and a strong press is repetitions, and then you can go to harder progressions quicker because the movement's going to be more efficient. So you can go, instead of having one press like I just showed, if you're more flexible with that strength, you can have 5 presses in a row because you're more efficient in the movement because you're not going so far out with your legs and your shoulders. You're keeping everything closer together. So I would train both. Is handstands on powerlets supposed to feel like completely different skill from the palm one? Yes, it will feel completely different because you're basically pulling yourself around compared to pushing, because it's more of a pushing type movement. However, they both sort of go very close together. So I would train both. So when I was learning, I basically done my handstand push up reps on powerlets. And also because I was working deficit movement, I didn't at the time have boxes or anything low that worked. So I was using those P-bars that were this high. So all my strength work for my handstands was done on the P-bars. And then my balance was done on the floor. And then I started to use blocks as well when I got into one-arm handstand. But because I was doing both at the same time, I can now do balance on nearly anything. Where if I'd only done bars or if I'd only done floor, you're going to really limit yourself in terms of going forwards from there. So I recommend that when you're practicing, play with a little bit of both the powerlets and the floor, but don't, unless you've got any wrist problems, I would make sure that you're doing quite a bit of floor as well. Because the trouble is with the powerlets is if you always train on them, like the same as if you train on blocks all the time, if you don't have your blocks or powerlets with you, then you can't train. So, or the level you're going to train is going to be so low. So don't like confine yourself to only be able to do that. Having the floor is your best option. Thanks for the super chat, Craig. I've really rounded back and super short, tight hamstrings. I can't seem to shake either issue. Any suggestions? So you just need to check, be realistic in terms of how often you're visiting those positions. So number one, that's normally the thing that people don't get the results because they're just not stretching enough compared to how much they're closing. So say you sit at a desk all day long with your knees, or you sit in this position all day long. Obviously, my hamstrings are now in a shortened position. If I stay here for 8 hours a day, but then stretch for 30 seconds, it's not going to balance out. So just being realistic that you're doing enough stretching compared to your flexibility, to your posture during the day. The other thing that can happen is if we are inflamed in any way. So if your organs are inflamed in any way, say you're eating something your body doesn't agree with, your body is going to try and pull your pelvis into a different position and keep pressure off the organs, and it won't let you lengthen certain muscles. So often if the abs don't work, the hamstrings will overwork, and they become a stabilizer of your pelvis and then don't let your hamstrings free up. So it's worth checking things like that. Just check that you're not inflamed, or there's anything else that's triggering the hamstrings to tighten up and become like a safety mechanism in the body, because it doesn't matter how much you stretch, your body's just not going to let go. But normally it's because either the hamstring stretching you're doing isn't good enough in terms of it doesn't match your current level, or it's just not frequent enough. So because my hamstrings were very, very tight when I started, I done Jefferson curls or a hamstring stretching exercise every day. And then they started to open up. And then because I started to train handstands every day, I started to visit those positions every day as well. So I'd recommend that you just assess yourself, think that you're your own coach, and you're assessing yourself and giving yourself some feedback on what you're doing. Are you visiting your hamstring position on a daily basis? Are you sitting in positions that are closing the hamstring? And then just check that inflammation thing. In terms of my favorite hamstring exercises, the Jefferson curl is very, very powerful because it lengthens the spine as well. Just hanging out in a forward fold position. Now, these forward fold positions, if you are very, very tight, so if you look more like this, these might not be the best hamstring stretch for you because it's not isolating the hamstring so much because my spine is doing so much. So if that's the case, one of the easiest, quickest way of doing this is the one I use for people that have disc pathologies or can't round their back for some reason, is the laying down hamstring stretch. So you lay down, if this was a doorway, and just doing a door, so this leg here is straight, so I put this one down, and then this one goes up on the post, and I lay backwards on the floor, so that keeps my spine flat, but this will be your hamstring stretch, and then I'll just slowly increase the height, or I move in closer to the thing, making sure this right leg stays straight, and then this is going to wind my hamstring up. I can just lay in this position, and you can lay here for 5 minutes, and then swap over and do the other side. This is a very safe stretch because the spine is staying very straight. So that's a really good one. This one I give to the majority of my clients in terms of hamstring warm-up. So going into that position, fingertips, even that position, you might feel a good stretch in the hamstrings. That one's really good because you can go in between your quad hip flexor stretch and your hamstrings. So it's a nice quick warm-up. But that should give you enough information. I've got a couple of videos on hamstring stretches as well. So what about full one-arm handstand, not straddle? Okay, full is, or straight position is seen as one of the most difficult one-arm handstand positions. However, the setup is exactly the same to your straddle. So most people would learn a strong straddle before they start training full position. So full position is really seen as having the arm beside your torso, and straight position is seen as having your hand out to the side. So if I'm in a one-arm handstand like this, if I close my legs to there, it's exactly the same position in terms of my hip So my hip being on top of my shoulder. So the center of my hip, my shoulder, my elbow, my hand, all should be stacked on top. Whether my legs are in straddle, whether my legs are in tuck, whether they're in diamonds, that stacking should stay the same. And the progressions you go through for your straight one-arm handstand should be exactly the same as your straddle in terms of hold times. So I would first train for a 10, 15-second one-arm handstand in straddle. Once that's strong, then start playing with straight position. And when you go to straight position, go through those same things. So be on fingertips first, shift the body across. So legs squeeze together, look at the hand, shift across, get lots of elevation, up to fingertips, then slowly take fingers away for hold times. And then you can start to take the hand out back again and start to work that, but exactly the same. But the straddle should give you the pathway for the other positions. You just copy it until you get to things like figure, which I can't do. I just don't have the hip and thoracic rotation to go into a figure position. But when you start going into figures, that's when you have twist in the body, and some of the rules go out of the way in terms of the shoulder position and the movement of the hip. Move the microphone so you don't have me drinking. I'm really struggling with the concentric strength for my handstand push-up. Pike push-ups are relatively easy. I'm struggling with strength progression. So there's a couple of things you can do for handstand push-up concentrics. So we can obviously grind it out by going up and down on the chest to wall handstand push-up against the wall, which is very similar to your pike push-ups. Make sure your handstand push-up eccentric is really strong. So it depends where you are with your freestanding journey on the handstand. Because I normally work, if you're working towards freestanding handstand push-ups, I'd normally be doing freestanding eccentric handstand push-ups as soon as the client can, and then doing freestanding deficit handstand push-ups, so coming down to a box. If you can't do freestanding, obviously just have toes on the wall, but make sure it's very, very slow, controlled, and there's hardly any weight on the wall coming down. And then at the same time as you're working those, I'd be working some partial range handstand push-ups and crow to handstand. So when you're using a crow to handstand, you can use, or frog to handstand, you can use momentum to take you up. And then once you're up there, a cool way to do it is to do a partial range. So if you have a target, so say, I use the yoga block. I do a crow up, so make sure you make a triangle with the block, so it's going to be in the right position. I crow up and watch the hat. So there, and now I'm going to do a partial range. So I come down, touch, and now I do a partial range concentric. So push back up again. Then I can just slowly increase that height. Or sorry, decrease the height. So I increase my range of motion in terms of how deep I'm going on that movement. But obviously you can't crow the handstand and do the partial range like that if you're doing it against the wall. So you have to work out your sequence that you can do, but you basically just don't want to have any gaps in your handstand push-ups. So in terms of the pathway, the concentric and the eccentric, we're going to make sure we're doing something for all three of those. So when I perform a full one-arm handstand, I fall down forwards and injured my right elbow. Yeah, so it probably means that your straddle one-arm handstand isn't strong enough yet. So I would work straddle one-arm handstand first, make sure you can do that, because there's a lot more room for error with a straddle one-arm handstand. And then just make sure that you're doing the fingertips for holds for long enough durations, sets, and reps. That demo you just did on the forward fold with rounded back and tight hammies, knees, it's me. Yes, I mean, that's super common. So so just listen to your body, give your body time to increase its range, but just make sure that you are doing enough. People, when people self-assess, it's a bit like, say, someone's trying to lose weight and then they they say, I can't understand why I'm losing weight. And then when they do a food diary and actually look at what they're actually doing instead of what they think they're doing, it's just not good enough. You know, they're having way more calories than they think they're having. So in terms of stretching, in terms of results, when people self-assess or get someone to assess exactly what they're actually doing, a lot of the time it's just not enough to give them the results they want to get. So just self-assess and see how you go. Calisthenics is the name of my game. Cool. Thank you so much. Hey, your channel is amazing. Thank you. Any other questions? What you see? Where's it? Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. I've got the garage door open, so that's why the noise is. And then Rosie's paying attention to anything that happens or goes past. So you are looking smart. It's cold here. I've got my long sleeve top on. Unless you're talking about Rosie looking smart. Any other questions? Anything people are struggling with training wise? Guys, if any of you are using my app, I have added a Discord. Discords are new to me. I haven't really used them much, but I want a way of anyone who's using my app. So when you go on the app, the homepage now, there's a little link there, new app user Discord. So you can click on there and then you can ask me questions and just create a bit of a community around people that are using the app. If you don't know anything about my app, if you go to my links in the description, there's it'll take you through that. Any other questions, guys? 9 people on live now. See, that left side is just so far behind my right. Handstand push-ups, tips and tricks from your experience. Just fill the gaps, train at the level correct for you. So a lot of people, I think, with all these exercises, whether they're presses, handstand push-ups, handstands in general, the balance work, we just tend to do too much work, not in the right level for us or the right progression where we can get enough repetitions. So, you know, like if we're trying to do a handstand push-up and we keep falling over every rep, or we're only doing half the repetition, so not going all the way down, that's like a big problem because you're not going to fill that gap. Now, unless you're slowly increasing the range bit by bit. So if I'm here with my handstand push-up, I look like this, and I'm doing this. And then I wonder why I can't get down to the floor. It's because I'm not doing enough work to fill that gap. So working out the progression that you need to work for your working sets. So it might be if you're doing that, say, maybe you need to go up on the wall and then do your repetitions there. So you're coming down and back up on the wall for 3 to 5 repetitions for 3 to 5 sets, and then have a play with the freestyle version. Or you do a superset where you do a freestanding attempt, 1 repetition, run up against the wall, do a working set of reps, so 3 to 5 reps there, and even drop back to a pike handstand push-up, just to make sure you get enough volume and you're filling all of the gaps. So don't have any gaps from a range of motion, or don't be doing all eccentric work, so doing the down phase all the time and not doing anything for your concentric for going back up. Any more questions, guys? So pike push up to handstand, I lift my legs but can't perform. But pike push up to handstand is a tricky bent arm press. A lot of people will get it wrong because of balance. So when you come down, your head and shoulders go forwards, and if your feet come up, it means your hips on top of your hands, which is great. So it means that you're in the sweet spot. The trouble is with a handstand push-up that it's a moving, dynamic skill. So you need to stay in that balance window throughout the pathway. So if I come down, I get to a point where my feet lift, I then need to go, hey, look, I'm still balanced, I'm still balanced, I'm still balanced, I'm still balanced. So if I get my feet too far in this direction, or my head and shoulders too far in this direction, or not enough in this direction, or if my hip changes and goes off the base, so it's not on top of the base anymore, I'm going to fall heavy in that direction. And I might not actually fall, but I might make the movement very, very hard to get out. Freestanding handstand push-ups, in a way, are much easier than wall handstand push-ups because you can use the overbalance to help you. So when I come out of the crow, so when I come up, watch how my feet go behind me a little bit, which pulls me up. That makes it very easy. If I try and do that same thing, but keep my feet there, notice how hard that is now. I'm on the edge of the balance, and I'm also making my body feel so much heavier. So what you want to do is make sure that you're helping yourself with your body position and not making it harder. Any other questions, guys? HRU, is that how are you? I'm very well, thank you. I'm very sore. I've done a lot of work in my garden. I had to empty a above ground swimming pool we had full of water, and it was a long process because we wanted to get it done quickly, and I'm really, really sore from it. So training wise, it's going to be a bit interesting. So this is good, doing a little bit of play of everything. Because you got to remember that, so I've trained the last 10 years on all these skills, but I've also been coaching every day. As I got more and more into them, I started to coach these skills as well, not just standard weight training style of personal training. So as I started to coach these skills more and more through the years, I'm training, plus I'm demonstrating to my clients, teaching classes, teaching workshops. So I'm constantly doing all those repetitions of skills that a lot of them I've already got. So I'm demonstrating skills at easier levels. So, a lot of people say, how do I do the movements that I'm doing and hold a conversation, make things look easy, makes things look hard, I can go between the different positions. It's the coaching on top of the training and skills as well. So just bear that in mind, that, it's all about repetitions and not just repetitions of the stuff that's ready for our level. We want to be able to do the stuff that's too easy for us as well. Use that as your warm-up, become an expert, coach people if you can, and that really helps. How can I increase the reps of my handstand push-up when I'm doing it, and when it's 2 reps, I'm losing my balance? So all I would do is you can do supersets or drop set type movements. So you do 1 or 2 repetitions at the level you're at now, and then just drop down a progression and do another 2 or 3 repetitions. So do a drop, like exactly the same as if you were doing like weight training. You're bench pressing 100 kilos, you do 2 reps, you can't get your 3rd rep. So you drop 5 kilos off the bar and then you continue. Just drop down, learn all the progressions. So very small progressions, easier and harder, and then try and ride the edge of that. So you can do more repetitions, but you're just making the progression very slightly easier. And also have a video yourself from the side and assess that pathway on the handstand push-up. If you're not using overbalance enough, then that's going to make it much, much harder to keep the balance and make the movements efficient. We want to make them as efficient as possible, so they're as easy as possible. So which one should I, 45-degree down handstand push-up or 90-degree down handstand push-up? I think you mean in terms of the body angle as you come down. You want to be more like that. So you want to be coming down here and then back up again, as long as your body allows that. Now that might mean that you go into a little bit of a banana as you go up and down. So don't go to a position that you can't physically do. So a lot of people will see, like someone like Simonster do perfectly straight handstand push-ups, 90-degree handstand push-ups. So he's got amazing strength, but also amazing mobility through the ranges that he needs to use. So he's staying efficient all the time. But it might not be the best position for you. You've got to find the position that fits your body type, the mobility you have, your position of strength, where your balance is, and ride the edge of that all the time. Don't think it's going to look perfect in terms of angles. You don't want to be too steep in a handstand push-up. So, and watch the head position as well. You'll see a lot of people will take with a handstand push-up, they'll take their nose to the floor. So when they do a handstand push-up, so this is how I prefer to do a handstand push-up. So keep the body straight here, take the head and shoulders forwards, feet come backwards, forehead touches, and then I come back up there. You'll see a lot of people when they come down, they'll do this and take their nose to the floor. You'll see what happened there when I done that. When I took my nose to the floor, it pulled my feet too far towards underbalance and I collapsed. So I prefer to keep the body into that straight line. It fits my body type better and puts me in the best possible position. I'm not a big fan of taking the nose to the floor. However, you'll see lots of people take nose to the floor and get lots of reps. So that's a good example of just finding your pathway and don't try and copy anyone else. You know, you take inspiration and aim to get to certain positions, but listen to your body and go on your pathway. Hi, Paul. Thanks for your great work. Want to know how you manage a lot of weekly volume. Should we train to failure or just leave 2 to 3? So I like to train every day, and I think that burning out. So that's where you can sort of play with what skills you're working in terms of how intense they are. So obviously, I wouldn't do my 1 rep deadlift every day of the week because the intensity is way too high. When it comes to calisthenics, it's much harder to measure intensity. So a good example is that I just done a handstand push-up and I was holding a conversation as I done it. So if I'm doing those type of repetitions, they're not intense for me. But if I'd never done one before and that's my 1 rep max, that same exercise would be super intense for me. So that's where it's very, very tricky to try and ride the edge. You know, the same workout plan for me and someone who's can do the skills, but they don't have the conditioning so much, or they're not as efficient in their balance, they're going to do the same repetitions as me, but the intensity is going to be way higher. So their overall load on their body by day 3 is going to be way higher than mine is. So you got to try and ride the edge of high intensity exercises that are working you hard, that we want. We want the muscles to break down. We want to build up back stronger again, but we can't do that continuously. So trying to work out, it might be that you go, 2 strength days in a row, which I like to do. So have a bent arm day, a straight arm day, and then have a balance day. And on that 3rd balance day, you're keeping everything much lower intensity. So normally I'll put in more balanced work. With the balance work, it could even be, if you're very strong, you might have handstand push-ups in your balance day where it's not actually working much strength and it's more technique and skill work that's fatiguing, but it's not intense. So it's easier on the body. So it is really, a little bit of guesswork, seeing how your body feels. If it feels too much, back off on maybe the progressions, make it so it's not so intense, and then do it that way. So it's hard to answer that 100% and give it an exact thing. And also mobility is amazing. Put that in as much as possible, use your rest periods, and just keep playing with that intensity and volume. I can hold handstand for 10 seconds. How can I hold for longer? Any tips? So I would just work that overbalance and underbalance pull to your handstand and hold there for time. So if you've got 10 seconds in the middle of the room, I would do, before you work your middle of the room, just do a few warm-up sets of building more time in this position. So pull away, hold, see if you can get 3 or 4 seconds there, go back to the wall. If that's easy, try and double it. See if you can get 8, 10 seconds, pull in that way, go back, exactly the same. See if you can get above 10 seconds in that position. Oop, and you fell over. So there, and then do the same this way around. So you're pulling to your handstand. So from here, I'm pulling to my handstand, holding. So now I'm training my underbalance. 3 to 5 seconds, back to the wall, pull off again, hold, build your times up there. So what that's going to do is that's going to increase your balance window. So what you can do back to wall, what you can do chest to wall. So working your overbalance and your underbalance. So now instead of your balance window being that big, it's now this big. And you can move around in that balance window when you're doing a freestanding handstand. it's a bit like doing the correct amount of work on the handstand push-ups I was talking about a minute ago, making sure that you're doing the training reps. So that's your training reps up against the wall. Then you're also doing your freestanding, but you're not doing all freestanding and not getting enough of the training reps. Good explanation, thank you. Coach, is weighted handstand hold 5 kilograms beneficial? I do this and my PM is 90 seconds. Weighted handstand hold, so what you put on ankle weights or a weight vest? Is that how you do that? Is that what you mean? I mean, if that's freestanding and you can do 90 seconds, a weighted vest. I'm not a massive fan of using a weighted vest. I would work other handstand balance skills, progressions. I play with ankle weight sometimes because with the ankle weight, it's on your extremities, so it highlights things. So if you're in a really good position, it'll highlight technique and it'll show you that you're in a really good place. But then if you're in a bad position and you've got ankle weights on, it will throw you out of the handstand. So I prefer that type of thing for weights. But I haven't really done any long holds of weighted vests. I mean, it's adding load or intensity, so it's making it harder in some way. So it's not necessarily wrong. I'm sure if you wore a weighted vest all the time and then took the weighted vest off, things are going to be much easier. So you're going to have that benefit. So how to handstand to negative planche position. You just need to have an eccentric press that's really clean. Obviously have a planche that's strong and then put the two together. Coming through a tuck frog position and just coming down. Train crow to handstand. Handstand to crow or frog first. I'm assuming you mean freestanding. So in this position, making sure that I've got froggy legs. So my knees are coming around the outside, rolling down through the spine. And then I'm just going to find my arms. Make sure you can do that. That shows that you can come down through the pathway. Make sure you have a strong tuck planche that you're going to end up in. And then just try and frog down. So arms straight, roll through the spine, try and get into a tight ball, and then push up and hold. You can walk down the wall into it as well, step into it. That way you can practice going from L-sit to planche. So other dynamic entries into it. But it's really just making sure you've got all those separate components first. So can you lower super slow into a frog position, crow position? Can you lower down to a crane? So put the knees onto the arms, but keep the arms straight. And then, is your balance good enough for that bottom position? And number one with that one, a lot of people try lots of repetitions of that, but their tuck planche just isn't strong enough. So the sweet spot that they're trying to land in is so small, it makes it now on impossible to land in a good position. I can hold handstand 40 seconds, trying to press now. Been doing compression drills for a year, but little progress. It seems also doing pancakes and hamstrings, but compression, little improvement. Yeah, I personally done very, very, very little and still now do very, very little compression work. It's probably why my feet drag on the floor all the time. My hip flexors just aren't strong enough. But in terms of press handstand, I would be working your eccentric press and your partial range press. So those two exercises, especially if you're freestanding, and then adding in the straddle pancake mobility and the forward fold mobility on top of that. So if you think of that, so two strength exercises, your eccentric press, so coming down, so making sure that this is super slow all the way down, and then there, making sure there's no gaps, so making sure you don't fall anywhere there. Partial range, whatever height you need to go on to get up. But obviously, that's going to be very dependent on your level at the moment. So this could be I could do with two of these, so they're a bit wider apart, but they'll work for the demo. So there, find a height that you can press up with, and then That fills the concentric, that fills the full range eccentric. Use the wall for the eccentrics if you can't get all the way down without dropping. And then hamstring flexibility, making sure your forward fold is nice and deep. And then I've done no straddle warm up this morning, but this is gives you an example. That's where my straddle pancake is, cold, or whatever I've done today so far. So you don't need to be dead flat to get a press handstand. I definitely wasn't. You just need to use a bit more strength. But trying to compress your legs towards your torso, if you don't have flexibility there, I would prioritize that over the compression work. I can hold a handstand for 25 seconds and 10 handstand push-ups against the wall. Fantastic. But I can't do a single freestanding handstand push-up. Any tips, please? So if you can hold a 25 second freestanding handstand, I'd start working crow to handstand, because the crow to handstand is just going to give you a lot more successful repetitions compared to trying to do a freestanding handstand push-up. Because at the moment, if your handstand hold like 25 seconds is awesome, but to do a slow eccentric handstand push-up freestanding, which is what you need to do to start to learn the pathway of the freestanding movement, is going to be sort of hit and miss. So I'd do a crow to handstand. If you catch it, then follow that with a slow eccentric. So you're learning the pathway balance, and you also get a freestanding up. So a bit like the press, we're doing a partial range concentric, and we're doing a full range eccentric. So I might crow up. If I catch, then I'm just going to do a slow eccentric down, and then come back out. So that's probably the two exercises I'll use the most for learning the freestanding. You can use the wall as well, and then slightly touch the wall, either back to wall, bend one knee, that type of thing. But I prefer, if we can, go freestanding completely. Okay. Thanks a lot. Greetings from Argentina. What time is it in Argentina? Thank you so much, sir. I will try next time with ankle weights. Yeah, ankle weights are fun. They're very, very frustrating, but they're fun. Hey, Paul, love your work. I was wondering, would you say Perth is the handstand capital of Australia? I'd love to hear myself around more hand balances. Yeah, it was massively, like 5 years ago. It was probably the epicenter of handstands in the world, I'd say. Unless you go down the circus route. If you go down the circus route, then I'm sure there's like places where Canada and Vegas or somewhere like that, where you'd have the biggest collection of hand balances. But in terms of people like coaches like myself, yes, I'd say Perth is probably one of the handstand capitals of Australia. The other cities are getting more people now, because there's just a lot more people training this style. But Perth is probably still one where you'll find the most people. We've got the most gyms. Like I live like north of Perth now, so I'm like 30 minutes north of Perth. So I'm not training in the gyms as much now, but there's still, I go visit the guys there when I can. There's probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 active coaches that do what I do now in Perth, which is awesome. Thank you so much. Makes sense. I can hold a 90-degree hold or elbow lever for 30 seconds. Might be off topic, but if I want to be able to press up into handstand someday, sooner than better. Oh, no, that's awesome. So I would be training, bent arm planche positions, elbow levers, playing with going from a bent arm planche position up to a shoulder stand and back down again is fantastic. You can do that on the P-bars or on the boxes. I get all my clients doing that sort of thing. I don't know if you was on at the start of the stream, but I was showing where I go from like a crow position down to a headstand, and then you could go up to a handstand, obviously with that crow to handstand type movement. But that seesaw where you take the shoulders down and the hips up, learning to do that, it's exactly the same in that 90-degree elbow lever position, and just learning to tip the head and shoulders down and bring the feet up in the air and then go back again. If you do it with your hands elevated, it's just much more easier to take the head and shoulders below the hands, so it's easier to go up. So if I go on bars like this, I can go into that elbow lever position. So there, and then I can take head and shoulders down. Notice they come back to my hands, and then I come forwards, back to that position again. You can do that on rings as well, because the rings can turn, and you can sort of get a nice shelf on your elbows to lean on. Amazing. I would definitely have to make a trip over that way then. Yeah, definitely. Like if you're coming over specifically for that, like check in with a few gyms first. I can like message me and I can give you some names of a few people just to make sure they're around. Because if you are going to come over we get people come over specifically to do that quite often. But just making sure that there's not, people aren't away on holiday or something, some of the main people you'd want to catch up with, because we've all got sort of different backgrounds. Because this is still relatively new, this style of training, and people's backgrounds, like I'm probably the oldest. I am the oldest in Perth training this style and coaching it. So my body type is going to be very different than someone who's, 6 foot and super flexible. So being able to talk to different people like that is really useful. I've learned a lot from you, and handstand is awesome. I'm from Philippines. Keep it swell. Awesome. Great to hear. Every time I try and planche, I get very sharp pain in between my wrist and elbow, even though I do proper training for my whole body. Is the pain normal? So if you watch that video, I put a video up like a couple of days ago about dealing with pain and discomfort in the body. I'm just sitting here and I'm cramping in my hip. So that's a good example. So basically, you want to make sure that you're creating enough space for your body and your position fits your body. So like when I planche, I make sure that I turn the hands out a lot. So I externally rotate my hands quite a bit. So if I'm in this position, I'll turn the hands out like this if I'm going to planche, and I'm doing this sort of width as well. So if I done the opposite to that and I went like this and had my hands very close, that's going to kill my wrists and my forearms. So if I create more space, that's going to feel much better for me. Now, if I'm using P-bars, I'll turn the bars out like that. I'll externally rotate them as well and then stay in that position. It's exactly the same as squatting as well. So when people squat, if they create more space, so this one's very visually, you can see what I mean. So if I'm doing a squat in this position, I'll externally rotate my feet. If it's very uncomfortable or my mobility is not great, I'll raise the heels as well. So if I put Ollie lifting shoes on, it's going to be much easier to do the squat because I'm creating more space. So if I do the opposite to that, and I come into this position, internally rotating my knees like that, but when I squat, you can just see that the body's not liking it. I can feel like the back of my calves and stuff is starting to hurt. If I keep going down, now there's a lot of pressure on the knees. So visually, you can see that's not right. So I need to create more space. And it might mean my happy place to squat is this right foot turned out, this left foot turned out a little bit. So they don't match, but they match my hips, they match my levers, and when I go up and down, I can squat comfortably now. So you need to do the same thing with your wrists and hands. Obviously, there could be a structural restriction, structural issue. You might have something that needs to be treated. Obviously, I can't give information on that. You need to get checked for that. But a lot of times, if you create more space, I either go, okay, my pecs and my lats are too tight, my thoracic's too tight, and my position isn't correct in terms of my scapula. That's going to make me compensate in my wrist and my forearm. So it might be something like that as well. So there's no direct answer for it. A lot of people will give exercises. So like physio type, rehab type exercise, you'll see that very common with shoulders and stuff, with external rotation, and all that stuff is amazing. And you need to do it. But we need to try and work out a way where the inflammation just doesn't happen. So I hope that helps. Yeah, try that on the rings. The shoulder stand movement on the rings is really cool. Obviously, just be careful if you do go all the way up to shoulder stand on the rings. Either have a low ceiling like I have, or a bar or something. So if I'm doing it on this bar where the rings are hanging off there, then my feet will hit the bar or my legs will hit the bar if I go over, because you can go all the way around. You can go into a straddle as well. So if you straddle, your legs will hit the straps. I've got a video on doing shoulder stand up on rings. Well, Rosie's barking at nobody. There's no one there. What have you heard? Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Rosie. That. Hey, Rosie, lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Lay down. Hey. She does not listen to me. What's up, bro? How are you, buddy? Coda handstand, what kind of compression drills do you recommend for that? Thanks for your time. In terms of compression, I wouldn't do anything specific for that. Just obviously you need to have the mobility to go into like a ball position. But learning to roll your body down is super important. So in terms of articulating the spine as you come down, so a Jefferson curl is really good to understand how you roll the spine as you come down. I don't want to get up now. Rosie sat with me. So being able to, if you just stand in this position and then learn the chin to chest, rolling down through the upper back, through the mid back, through the low back. So a lot of people, when they do this, they do that. Their body moves as one piece. Well, that's going to make you go further out when you do the Corona handstand. So the more I can round through that into this position, the easier it's going to be. And then notice as well that it's much easier to get down in this position with my legs apart. If I do this and try and Corona handstand with the legs together, it's way more restrictive. So when I go into my Corona handstand, I'll do it this way so you can see my legs are apart. And the same on the way back down, my legs are apart because I can roll through the spine easier. I can practice that laying down. So here I can hold on to something, just put my hands against the wall. And the goal there is to come down, try and bring your knees to your elbows by rolling through the spine, not by lifting. Look, I can't do it by lifting because the lever arm's too heavy. So if you're falling out of the handstand and falling down fast, your back might be staying flat, where we need to try and roll more as we come down. Please tell straight arm shoulder strength exercises. Straight arm shoulder strength exercises, so planche leans, they're going to be your number one thing on the in terms of pushing movements. If you're newer to it, you could go into like press leans. So you should be taking the shoulders forwards. So in being in these type of positions, like this is like basic strength stuff in that position. So planche leans around the upper back, planche walks in and out, making sure you can load in that position. So there, so pushing movements and then going into tuck planches and stuff like that. And then skin the cat. Skin the cat is like so good because it trains all of your push and your pull. It's pull on the way up, on that initial movement, and then as you go through the German hang, it's more of a pushing movement, so like into that back lever position, and then pull back out again. So skin the cat, if your time is an issue, one exercise. I don't have my rings up. I did demonstrate it earlier, but you might not have been on then. So you can do it on here. I can walk up the wall if I need to, and then go through into my German hang. So here, and then pull back out, nice and slow. So that's going to fill a lot of your gaps in your straight arm, push in and pull in. You can break it down and go, I want to train back lever, front lever, planche, press handstand, and everything in between. But then you've got 20 exercises to work instead of like one or two. But 58 minutes, guys. Normally I do an hour, but if the questions keep coming, I'll stay around for a bit longer. When it comes to strength-based moves like 90-degree push-up, planche press, or planche push-ups, do you recommend adding weight training? And if so, how often should you practice each one? I never did. So when I started getting into this now, I have a pretty strong overhead press. I've always been pretty strong at pushing. So, and I've got short arms as well. Obviously, that helps. I'm sort of made for straight arm pushing. So I started when I was 37. I'm not stupidly strong. I can overhead press strict like 70 kilos, and do push presses 80, 90 kilos. So not stupidly super strong, but pretty strong in that pushing movement. But at 37, I'm now about to turn 48. I stopped weight training completely. And then I went on to learn 90-degree handstand push-ups. I can't do, obviously, straight body planche presses, but I can do like a high hip straddle planche press. 90-degree push-ups aren't a problem. Dead press, it's a bit archy, but I can do that. So I got all those skills without training any weight training for upper body. So very, very occasionally I'll do a YouTube video or something to demonstrate how much strength I've still got, but I don't use strength training. I don't tend to program it for clients. I would normally drop down to dips, even like get people, beginner someone who's totally new, work more push-ups, dips, and go down that route. Pike push-ups, handstand push-ups. It's just because time is so challenging in terms of working out what exercises and what where you do your time. So I feel that most people should be doing as close to the real thing as possible. You've also got the thing where if we're pushing something, that's an open chain movement. So our hand is moving, our body's not moving. Where a handstand push-up, our body's moving and our hand stays still. So that idea as well is apparently makes it much better as a carryover if we train the thing. However, if you feel like you're missing strength and you just can't build it, the barbell is probably the easiest way to linear build strength. So you could add in, a once a week do a 5x5 overhead pressing. It could definitely help, but it's tricky to add in. But I would definitely not say stop calisthenics, just do weight training, because there's a lot of people who are very, very strong but can't do, a pike push-up. Yes, I learned that hard way and gave myself a bad friction burn on the straps the last couple of weeks. Yeah, that's common. Handstand press-ups on rings are so hard compared to wall assisted on the ground. Yeah, rings just like that unstable is just, that's how it's going to be. Like people who get very, very good on the rings, it's just a time thing. But normally the people who are very good on the rings aren't quite so good at handstands, for example, or planches, or unless they train planche on the rings. So it's down to anything. When you start to get at the pointy end, you start to have to make some decisions on what am I going to train, what am I going to get good at. And I've decided to back off on my one-arm handstand now. My one-arm handstand used to be way more consistent than it was. Now I just play with it. I very hardly do a full session on one-arm handstand because I enjoy all the other stuff and I want to be as much sort of well-rounded as I can be, especially from a coaching point of view. So it's sort of a decision. Hi, Paul. Thanks for the daily content. I know what drills, mobility can be done in order to get your back fully touching the wall while in handstand position. So having the confidence to take your shoulder to the wall, like that's a condition, being able to push up in that position is one. And also just making sure flexibility wise, you're in a good place. So what we're talking about here is it's a great exercise. So learning, let's move the coffee cup. I've still got half a coffee there. That's how dedicated I am to you guys. I've stopped drinking my coffee. So basically if I externally rotate the hands, so create a position where my body's strong and happy to go forwards with the shoulders. What I don't want to do is be in internally rotated position or have the hands very close, because that's going to restrict me coming forwards and be uncomfortable. Where if I do this with my hands, so if I turn them out, create more space, so I'm not now closing down on the wrist. So if I go in that position like that, now I kick up to the wall. I'm going to be very comfortable to take my head and shoulders to the wall. So I first go on my head, come back again. If that feels okay, take the shoulders. But as long as I'm pushed up in this position, it's easy to get the low back there. But if I do this, stick my butt out, and now my head, I've created an arch. And now I can't close that position. So trying to first get your head and your shoulders to the wall and back off. So start with the head, keep pushing up. If you can, then take your back and shoulders. So like that. So making sure you've got that strength to do the repetitions, first with the head, slowly then take the shoulders, and then eventually back, is going to give you the position to get to the wall. It's not normally mobility that stops you. It's normally mobility, too much mobility, that stops a lot of people, because they tend to arch into extension. So normally you'll see that with people, like a lot of people do maybe yoga, and they're very flexible through their extension, but not so strong in their pushing strength. So then they'll collapse a little bit. It will only be a small amount. They'll collapse a little bit, and then it won't be able to get all the way to the wall, and their body will like sink. And then that's where you'll get a lot of that extension. So normally it's strength that you can't get into that position. And you can easily test it, because like if I go, this is the position I want to be practicing, this position here. So my low back is pushed into the wall, into the floor, my shoulders are, my head is, that's the same position. My hands are further away. So you can, then everyone can do that on the floor. As you bring the legs down, you might find that your back arches away from the floor. So that's showing you that your hip flexors are pulling on your pelvis, tipping your pelvis, creating the arch. So it's normally a strength thing in that position. You can also make, if that is the case, make it a bit more ugly, bend the knees a little bit, and it'll make your body sort of not be so demanding from a positional point of view, especially around the hips. But that one is very, very common, especially if you're working like press, handstand and stuff. Where are we? So I've been practicing against the wall to make sure my back is rounded to pull up my hips. Is that right for press? Yeah, so with the press handstand, so I've got a video where I'm talking about bringing the feet up off the floor. So the hip position is so important. I made one like 2 days ago as well, showing where the hip is and how you can position the hip in different places relevant to your base of support. So your hands and shoulders and your hips, wherever they are and how stacked they are, is going to change when you press. So when you use the wall, you're using something that's going to help you from a target point of view. But if your hands are too far away from the wall or too close to the wall, it's going to change where your hip is. So if my hip gets up enough, then I can press. But if my hip's back here, I can't press. Or if my hip's too far forwards, I'm just going to fall in that direction. So there's a sweet spot for your hip. If you video from the side, it should make sense that it looks correct. If not, watch one of my videos where I'm showing the press drills from the side. Don't look at exactly my position, because our body types are going to be different, but look at the hip, the shoulder, and the hand, and look where they are, and then how much the legs are sticking out. If my legs are sticking out really far, it's going to affect how my hip, and it's going to pull me in the direction of the legs. If my legs come closer to the hip, then it's going to be the hip is going to be more in control in terms of stacking on top of the base support. I hope that makes sense. That was hard to visualize, I suppose. But watch, self-assess, video yourself on the side. Look at someone who can do the thing, and then check, okay, my hip is not on top of my hands, and it should become clear. I can't lift my toe when doing pike press to handstand. Any tips for that? It's exactly the same thing as what I just said. So your hip needs to be directly on top of your hands or slightly over to get up. Pike is seen as the hardest because it demands the most flexibility. Unless you're super strong in the shoulder. So I'm a bit of both. So I've got quite good flexibility here, and then I can push up. But notice when my hip gets on top of my hands, I can lift my feet. So video yourself on the side, see where your hip is relative to the heel of the palm, and that should give you some information. If it is stacked on top, then doing really slow eccentrics. So handstand, really slow down. That should give you some information. Then you can just start doing partial range press up, and then slow eccentrics to toes. So you want your toes to kiss the floor very, very lightly. If they're not kissing the floor very, very lightly, you're going to miss that gap. So a lot of people are very flexible. Their feet will come here, but they won't be able to get down, because that's the point where the hip is pulled off the top of the shoulders and you'll fall down heavy. So again, self-assessment video from the side, and it should make more sense. My question is for straddle press to handstand. Headstands are easy for me. Yeah, straddle press to handstand. You just need to now train the shoulders. So that's the big difference between the headstand or forearm press to inverted. The handstand shoulder position for the press handstand is the biggie. So a lot of people who can do the forearm stand and the headstand presses will think the press is going to be relatively easy and feel the same, but it's quite different in terms of the shoulder. So the shoulder needs to become the main driver. So if you don't have it already, I would train your tuck handstands. Make sure that's super strong, nice and deep, and that's going to really help you for the press handstand. And then just follow the wall drills, eccentrics, and partial range, and that will slowly fill your gap. It depends where you're missing on those two exercises. High pull, I can go super slow on 90-degree negative, but get stuck on bent arm planche at the bottom. What is the best exercise to work on for strength to go back up? So I would do the one where you're doing, I've got a 90-degree handstand push-up where I'm on weight plates. That demonstrates it really well. So you're doing like the, or you can do it on the steps. I just see my shoulder's been a bit niggly in this lower position, so I might not be able to demonstrate that well. So I would do something like this, that type of thing. So you're practicing in more of a tuck position and just learning to go through that pathway of like that type of thing. So it's a bit more like a crow to handstand. Then do your slow eccentric with straight body with a concentric that's a little bit more froggy and using a little bit more momentum. And you can obviously do that on P-bars, boxes, and things like that. It's much harder to do on the floor because you want your head to sweep down below. So raising the hands up, those bumper plates, those bumper plates work really well because you can change the height of them. So if you have access to those, they're really good. Surprised to hear you don't do weight training. No, I don't do weight training anymore. So you remember that I started this style of training at 37 and I've been doing weight training since like I was, 15. So I had many years of weight training. So, I can do lots of chin-ups, lots of dips. My upper body was strong. My lower body was quite strong as well. I don't do as much lower body now. That makes calisthenics a bit easier as well. Takes some of the weight out of the legs. I just complete my basic and learned basic skill like handstand. I sit elbow, leave or elbow lover and other, but I am stuck. What else should I go for skill? Base exercise only or strength exercise both? I would look at all the skills that people are training and pick the ones that you really like. I normally suggest, like, if people don't really know what to do, I would pick a goal that's bent arm strength, straight arm strength, and balance related, and then that will feed the other training. So that will feed what mobility is needed. So say your goal is a press handstand, that will show you that, okay, your handstand balance needs to be very good and your mobility needs to be very good as well. And then you can just start to work on the progressions that you need to increase both of those things to take you towards the press handstand. If it's handstand push up, same thing, but you just do the bent arm version, not so much mobility requirement for the handstand push up. And then so do that. Just pick the skills that you want to learn and then build some sort of program that goes through the progressions. There's so much free content out with all the progressions on YouTube. I've got lots on my channel, or then my app goes through all the programs for a lot of the skills. Guys, talking about app, I don't know if you was on here earlier. I have put on a Discord. So when you go onto the app, if you're using it already, you can see that. There's now a Discord, so click on that. You can ask me questions and ask the community questions, and we can just get a bit of a community going. Just wait for this train to pass. The hardest thing with my app is being in contact with people. So I want to get feedback. I want to improve things, but if I'm not talking to the people that are using the app directly, it's really challenging. I don't want people to get stuck or don't know what to do. So if you are using the app, jump on the Discord, send me questions, send me feedback, send me requests, And while it's quiet on the Discord, I'm going to see every message as well and reply to everyone. So make sure you jump on there if you are using the app. Hey, I just got my first handstand push-up. That's awesome, but I felt like a bit of a fluke. Yeah, that's how all your first ones are. Don't worry about that. That will come. How do I train the movement pathway and increase my balance concentration? So make sure your 2-arm handstand is super balanced, both under balance and over balance, especially under balance. You cannot stop improving on that. That's the reason that I can bang out 10 handstand push-ups, and the average person who's stronger than me can't do 2 handstand push-ups. It's because my balance is better and my understanding of the pathway. So slow eccentrics make your balance window super big, and that will make everything much easier. But congratulations on the first one. That's really cool. And awesome that you've used my content as well. But I mean, the information's there. The hard work is the bit that most people struggle with. So people do consistently train. And that's what gives the results. So give yourself a big pat on the back. That's awesome. I could handstand and push up at the wall for 5 reps. So how long I could handstand, not 2 against the wall? I could do arch or push-ups for 5 reps, 5 push-ups. Not against the wall is all dependent on freestyle and handstand. So it doesn't matter how strong you are when you're using the wall or doing pipe push-ups. If you never learn a freestanding handstand, you're not going to be able to do a freestanding handstand push-up. So just start hitting daily a simple handstand practice. Doesn't need to be much. That's the best way to do it. Guys, I'm going to have to sign off. My battery's about to die. Sir Dog, there we go. She's fast asleep now. She's had enough. This time might work for me. I'm going to try and get on a little bit more, at least once a week. I keep saying that every time I do a live. It's just hard to find the time, especially when the kids are at home over the weekends. So mornings work quite well. So I'm going to try come on a little bit more. I'll aim for once a week, but if you are using the app, download the Discord, jump on there. I'm new to Discord, so I might need some help with that. So point out any feedback on that if you do use it. And cool. So if you're watching the recording of this, comment down below. I will see comments. I try and reply to majority of them. If a video goes well, comments go through the roof across the board. So I sometimes miss stuff. So if I don't answer, comment again on a different video, or jump on that Discord if you've got the app. Ask the questions there, and I will speak to you soon. Thanks, guys.